Hi guys, I'm Craig and this is A Carpenter's Way. I said in a few of my shorts that I was going to try to make another video that would explain a little bit about myself, the injuries that I've had and overcome, and where I was and where I am now. First, my name is Craig Carpenter. That's why I call this A Carpenter's Way. I have little background about me is I started lifting weights when I was 12. Always wanted to be a power lifter. I saw the powerlifting competitions with Lou Ferrigno and the bodybuilding competitions with Arnold Schwarzenegger and all that going through the 70s. And I always wanted to be a power lifter. Never wanted to be a bodybuilder, but a power lifter. So I started lifting young. And by the time I was 17 in high school, I played football through junior high and high school. Um, I had a Volkswagen Golf, a 1981 Volkswagen Rabbit, the American version, and I would grab the back bumper of the car and pick the tires up off the ground and walk the car around in a semicircle. And that was about the only way I could find that I could get heavy enough exercise with my legs. I was doing all the weights we had on the incline rack and the rack in the high school at the time, which was only 750 pounds, and it wasn't enough. I was also max pressing at 17 years old. I was pressing 365. I was 212, 215 pounds my junior year of high school. I was one of the big guys on the line back in those days. Anyway, so I was always fairly strong. I grew up on a functional farm, and I was used to functional strength, moving heavy equipment, moving heavy stuff, moving cattle, working with cattle, horses, all that. So that's what I love to do. Anyway, when I left high school, I left my junior year and started a job that summer, and I was a heavy or an industrial equipment and truck tire repairman. We did backhoes, earth movers, tractor trailer trucks, anything that had a retainer ring or a split wheel. That's the kind of stuff that I fixed. I had one of those wheel and tire combinations that's full of mud and water following me from about 8 foot up, and it broke T11 and T12. I say it broke, fractured T11 and T12, compression fracture. Didn't separate. I was strong enough, thankfully, that I ended up not being a paraplegic, but it did cause a lot of lasting damage, long-term damage. It was not just those two discs or those two vertebrae, but I compressed L4, L5, and they gave me release after a year of 25 pounds. It took me probably 4 years to get better. Anyway, so I got better from there, and then went to work as an electrician's helper. And while I was doing that, before I got that job, I was 20 and then turned 21 while I was working as a bar back and then a bartender and in security at a number of clubs in that same town. And I liked the security aspect of it. I liked doing that. So when I got the job as a helper, as an electrician helper, I kept doing security. And I would do mobile security, walk around security, security in the bars, pool hall, stuff like that. And my second year as an electrician's helper, I got stabbed in 1996. I got stabbed in the chest and then stabbed in the back of my right leg. I got jumped by a gang of kids. There's about 8 of them, and they were all from 16 to 19 or 20 years old at the time. And it punctured the bottom of my right lung and severed a lot of the connective tissue and whatnot between my ribs. And that took a while to recover from. That hurt. Kind of hard to do any physical activity when you can't breathe. So I made it back from that. And when I left the industrial electrical scene, I got back into security in one form. I actually went to work as a federal detention officer and worked there for a while. And during duty, I actually ended up tearing my meniscus in my right knee. Not bad, just a mild tear. And went in and had a surgery for that. Did the MRI, all that stuff, not a problem. Minor injury, minor surgery, had that taken care of. Well, they wouldn't give me my position back as the mobile patrol officer at the time, so I went back into electrical for the union. Got my journeyman's license in Austin. And then about a year later, a year and a half later, we moved back out to where we were before. I went to work at the local sheriff's office. And I was with that sheriff's office for about 4 years total. However, my second year, I broke my neck. I was a SORT officer. Just like when I was working federal, I was a CERT officer. Different units, different terminologies, but SORT is Special Operations Response Tactics. And we were the guys that when we had a cell entry or somebody going off or riot, we were the ones who would armor up and go take care of it. My primary position was working in booking, doing intake, dealing with people coming in, whether they're drunk, drugged up, whatever. Loved the job. Well, we had a violent cell entry, and I was second man on team. So lead man, when we breached, the inmate that we were dealing with was about 175, 180 pounds. And we breached, and the lead man on team, we went in. He got, the guy grabbed the lead man's shield and pulled him down. And well, lead flipped the guy, literally stood up and flipped him over his head, and he landed on my head. And they said the only thing that prevented it from getting worse was that my helmet and my body armor met and compressed, and it couldn't shift any further. But as it was, it fractured C6 and herniated that disc. And I ended up, of course, in the ER, spent a few nights in the ER, and then got out and spent the next 19 months in physical therapy. At that same time, same accident. Also compressed L4, I think it was. But I spent 9 months, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week in physical therapy. I had to learn to ride again. Couldn't feel my hands. C6, C5 and C6 are the vertebrae where the nerve branches come out that control all the nerves in your hands. And my hands felt like two balloons that were on fire. Couldn't functionally sign my name for probably 5 months, and I eventually got better. I had symptoms from that for probably 5 years where I could turn my head just right and my hands go on fire again. Anyway, got better from that. Went back to duty at about 20 months. And I was on unit right at 23, 24 months. And the unit got struck by lightning 7 times in one night. Major lightning storm out there. And it blew all the security cameras, and it blew all the controls from central control. You couldn't unlock or lock any of the doors. So all the officers had to operate the interlocks and the pod doors manually with the key. And for the first few months I was back, I started back at like 19 or 20 months. I was in central control because I didn't have a release to be on the floor. I think it was around 23, 24 months. We had another officer that had an injury, and I was still recovering, and they said, okay, you're good enough to be on the floor. I wasn't. But I was on the floor, and they put me in the max unit, which is where I was used to working, dealing with the gangs, the nasty offenders. Anyway, during that, I ended up herniating that L4 disc that I had previously compressed. And then I got relieved of duty. Spent another couple of nights in the ER. I spent the next few years getting better from that. I went from there to AutoZone, since I had the background in automotive. And I worked my way to assistant manager at AutoZone. Then I went from AutoZone to O'Reilly's as assistant manager, and then from O'Reilly's to Dodge. And I was at Dodge for a little while, and I was working with the shop, and I had come out of the shop through the area that they call the pit, where they do all the chassis lube, oil changes, stuff like that. And I had gotten some grease on my boots. Excuse me. So Right as I stepped outside the door to that bay, there was a composite speed bump, and I hit that speed bump just right with that grease, and I slid and snapped my right knee backwards and snapped my ACL. So, went to the hospital, found out what had happened, and the insurance company at the time tried to claim that it was a previous injury, saying that I had torn my ACL before that day. And I spent 11 months fighting with them about that before they finally did surgery, and it was only because I had a torn meniscus and had done an MRI then, and they went back and saw that the MRI was intact, or my ACL was intact in that MRI, and validated that it wasn't a previous injury. Now, here's the interesting part. I'm sorry. During the surgery for the first ACL replacement, which they did a harvest, there's a double thickness ligament ligament in your thigh that they can harvest a section of, and they did for me. And when they were doing the attachments on the femur and the tibia, the doctor doing the surgery had a stroke. They didn't know he was suffering any problems. They didn't know what was going on. They closed up and sent me home, kept it quiet. I didn't know for over a year later. But 3 days out from surgery, the attachment near the femoral head broke. I had 2 screws holding the attachment into the bone and in the graft so it would grow together. Well, the screws pulled out of the bone in the femur. About 4 days later, the tibial attachment snapped. And they made me do about 12 weeks of therapy like that. Never believing me that there was a problem, that there was something wrong, that it was just getting worse. They didn't understand. I went through, I think, 4 more surgeries, and it was the fourth surgery, and this is through a period of 3 years, that they found out that I was correct, that the attachments had broken out of the bone, and they were going to do new replacement attachments and a new ACL, an allograft, and they couldn't because the holes where they needed to put the replacements were so big that they had no attachments that would fit there. They had no screws that would go in there, so they had to do a bone graft, and then I had to let that heal and then go back for the new ACL replacement. And that new ACL replacement is the ACL, well, was the ACL that I had. That was my 6th surgery. From there, I went on about my life, got better, figuratively. And then, let's see, I ended up getting so bad with all the cumulative injuries, with the no surgery for the neck and then not having surgery or help with the low back being terminated, the knee surgeries, everything else. I got really, really big. I got my max weight last time I stepped on a scale. Not my max, I'll say that, was dead on 420 pounds. And I know that it was 8 months or so after that, so I was probably over that, I had a TIA. Anyway, a mild stroke, to put it in easier terms. And at the time, I had a year-old daughter. And I decided that I wanted to be around. I was very unhealthy, miserable, very, very overweight. I was on glipizide. I was on a number of other medications, I think 5 at the time. and they wanted to put me on metformin, and I started taking it. And then 3 days later, I was in the hospital. I was as allergic as you can possibly be to metformin. And my doctor, I found out after that TIA that I had a blockage in what they call, it's the aorta, the one they call the widowmaker. I had a blockage there, not a complete blockage, but a decent sized blockage. I had a hardening of that artery. They told me that with everything going on in my life, I had about a 95% chance of having a massive heart attack and dying. So I didn't like that. I wanted to stick around. I had a daughter to be here for. I had a wife to be here for. They relied on me. So I talked to the doctor, and the doctor said, we need to do gastric bypass. And I'm like, I said, no, I'm not going to do gastric bypass. And my doctor honestly had been on this about me, or about this, bothering me about this for 2 years. Because I just kept getting bigger and bigger. Started off around 345, 365, 380, and then heaviest. So I went keto and carnivore. I started doing the research. I started studying. Started working towards my bachelor's degree for health and wellness with nutrition, fitness nutrition, and then working towards certification for nutritionist coaching. And in the first year on keto and carnivore and with intermittent fasting, I lost 150 pounds in 1 year. Then I got into the gym, got back into the gym. And inside, I would say 2.5 years, I went from 420 plus down to my lowest was 224. I was 224 to 16 BMI from like a 49 BMI or something like that. Solid. I was doing good. And then 2023, I had an emergency appendectomy. 2 weeks later, I had my first major back surgery, which is what they call a nerve root destruction. They drill through the vertebrae to get to the root of the nerve and the spinal cord, and they burn it off there. I was just about paralyzed from sciatica. I couldn't even put my feet on the floor. Couldn't walk. Could barely walk. Could barely move. And then 3 weeks later, after the back surgery, or 4 weeks later, I had my total knee replacement on my right knee. Since then, in 2024, I had my second major back surgery, which was a lumbar fusion. My L5S1 has been fused. I've got 6 rods and 12 screws in there. My S1 had rotated completely in, so they had to rotate that back out, separate it, clean it all up, and then put the rods and screws in and infuse that. And during all of that, I made it all the way back up to 300 pounds. Now, I'm currently at 250. I'm still thicker than I want to be. My goal is to get back down to 235. And I hope that y'all will join me in that process. I've only got another 15 pounds to go, but next week I am going to see a surgeon for a fusion in my neck. I'm probably going to have to do a multi-level fusion in my neck because I have to have a total shoulder replacement. So that'll be a total of 12 surgeries and 16 or 17 different procedures. I've had a number of nerve ablations, some facet joint injections, other things, little things here and there just to keep going until I can get other things done. And that's where I'm at right now. So all told, 7 knee surgeries, an abdominal surgery, 2 major back surgeries, in prep for a neck surgery and then a shoulder replacement. I'm down in total from 420 plus pounds to my lowest at 224. I'm currently at 250 pounds, and my goal is between 230 and 240. And I would like to see you guys come with me. If y'all have any questions, any comments, um, this is just my story, and my hope and desire is that I can show others that it is possible to do this. That unless it's something extreme, a lot of surgeries aren't necessary. It really comes down to the willpower and desire to better yourself. And more importantly than that, keeping a positive state of mind. And I think that those two things, the willpower and a positive state of mind, being able to look at things and see where I need to go and hey, this is good progress, and not look at something as a failure and say, man, I'm never going to do this. Just keeping going, the ability to keep going is important. Don't look at things as a failure, look at things as an opportunity to learn, and keep going, keep pushing forward. Um, if I can do it, anybody can do it. And I'm here to tell you that I did it, and I'm going to keep doing it, and I want to help other people do it. And I hope that somebody can see where I am now, uh, and where I was, and realize that they can do that as well. That's why I'm here, guys. This is A Carpenter's Way. I'm Craig. Let's have some fun.